Okay, now we're still waiting for Zhu Feng. Zhu Feng has some problem to log in. So I'm just asking our technical staff to fix his problem. Okay, we can chat a little bit.
We had an exciting day in Washington today. The first snow in 2 years.
Oh, first. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It closed the government today.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Here in South China, it's very warm.
Celebrate.
We had 5 inches of snow.
Springtime.
Yeah.
In Beijing, we had a snow already.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Trump has won the election. The primary.
I'm still for Nikki Haley.
现在可以了吗？他们那边在处理吗？不是你那个声音。
哦，还没有
是怎么回事情？
因为我给他发了那个链接，而且我告诉他要要 VPN 才能进，所以他现在
他上不去啊。
对，
他上不去，是什么问题？你让那个剑锋处理一下还是怎么样？
不，这次这个不是他这个上去的时候，他需要填一个那个叫什么邮件地址，然后呢，他先给分到这个听众里头。然后呢，再问你是不是嘉宾，然后再点入进入嘉宾，然后他又调到嘉宾这个 function， 所以他这个比以前的那个要复杂一些。
我也不知道怎么搞。因为我们在深圳以前是可以的，以前是因为我在浸会大学教书，用的是浸会大学的那个 account， 然后这学期我不教了。这期就我不教了，然后我们就自己购买了一个升级版，但他们听说好像是说要到香港去购买
啊。
哎呀，好像所以现在这个越来越复杂了。所以这个像这样的这种学术交流都不能进行的话，那你们平时 webinar 是怎么开的？秦国兄，你们应该
我们都是用这个用 Zoom 用那个用国内的也用腾讯啊什么之类都可以用。
腾讯也可以用是吧？那
腾讯也可以。
对，但就有的外国嘉宾他们不用腾讯嘛，就
对，你用 Zoom 是很方便
这个问题我们要解决。Sheldon 现在他们是怎么处理的？现在
他们正在给朱峰老师打电话。
OK， So hope we can fix the problem.
Should we get started, or we can have randomly chat?
I would suggest we wait for another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Until 10 past 10. Yeah. So DC time is 9 past 10. So sorry for keep you waiting. Yeah.
No, the only thing I have to do is teach class tomorrow morning.
Oh, you're still teaching. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Qingguo, are you
at Georgetown?
At Georgetown.
Well,
yes.
we just finished teaching.
We just finished.
Yeah. Today I'm supposed to hand in the grades.
No, really?
And then take a break.
Are you a difficult grader?
Are you a difficult grader?
I think I'm a more easy grader. But we need to satisfy certain kind of requirements.
I see.
Some of our students argue when they get their grades.
Oh yeah.
Some would come and say, "Look, I deserve more."
Right?
Normally they don't come. They say I deserve less.
Particularly some female students, very hardworking female students. Sometimes they complain, "Oh, I was working so hard. Why do you give me B plus or the A minus?" I often told them nothing to do with you're hardworking or not. I just focus on your results. Yeah.
Our women students are better than our men students.
Yeah. They're very hardworking.
They're very hardworking.
Yes.
they pay a lot of attention on how many A+ they receive during the whole studying time. Most students complain to me, during my 2 years studying, this is the first time for me to get a A-. Can you please give me an A? Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to receive my next scholarship. Yeah, women are very hardworking.
And they are doing better.
I think
I enjoy the teaching.
They used to do well in primary schools and then middle schools, and then in college, and then now master students and even PhD students, they are the best.
Oh, even PhD students.
Yeah. So now it's time is changing.
Women are basically taking over the global leadership. If you try to look around what's going on with companies, in terms of the leaderships, as long as some jobs requires leadership, women are mostly, at least not worse than men. We have so many women, on the leadership level. Unless it requires, math, physics, those skills. Okay, let's see whether Zhu Feng will be okay. Sheldon, can I ask whether Zhu Feng is okay now?
I think they still have some technical issue, and Zhu Feng didn't reply my message yet. So I think I suggest we can get started, and every panelist can give their remarks, and probably later Professor Zhu Feng can join us. Yeah.
Sure.
So we can get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So I'm Sheldon Xie, Research Fellow at Center for Globalization Hong Kong, CGHK. Welcome to our first inaugural session on the CGHK Inside Dialogue in 2024 on the Taiwan elections. So the CGHK is unparalleled and the independent Hong Kong-based think tank dedicated to policy research and strategic consultation in for private enterprises and government agencies. We also actively serve as a public platform for policymakers, scholars, and even students across the world to consult and exchange their views on various global affairs. So I guess everyone in this room still found the Taiwan election results in the past weekend still surprising. Taiwan's Vice President Lai Qingguo from the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, who led the public opinions poll through the election campaign, has won the race with just over 40% of the votes. And the Kuomintang challenger Hou You-yi garnered the 33.5% and while the TPP, the Taiwan People's Party candidate Ko Wen-je came in third with the 26.5% of the votes. So Lai's victory marks the third consecutive achievement for the DPP. The only time any political party in Taiwan become a ruling party seems the first direct for 3 terms seems the first direct presidential vote in 1996. So in his acceptance speech, Lai has pledged to follow the Tsai's footsteps, preserving the Cross-Strait status quo. And he said he had an important responsibility to maintain the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. However, while what Lai said still raised a lot of skepticism as his previous records as a so-called a pragmatic worker for Taiwan independence. So that's a lot of skepticism here. So the paramount questions are looming over to us. So what do the cross-strait relations look like under the Lai Qingguo's government in the following 4 years? And to what extent would the Lai Qingguo's government open to talk or restore the communication channels with Beijing? And could we expect the Taiwan Strait status quo can still be maintained? So to address these questions, we are going to focusing on the implication of the election results and on the cross-straits in this session. So in response to the pivotal moment, the CGHK initiated the dialogue series to comprehend this nuanced and evolving dynamic. Leveraging our Hong Kong base and tapping the expertise of the distinguished scholars and practitioners in the China policy field, our goal is to bridge the gap of the policy understanding between the US and China in cross-strait affairs. So hence, I'm honored to introduce our esteemed panelists joining us today. First, we have got Professor Jia Qingguo, the former dean of the School of International Studies at Peking University, and Professor Dennis Wilder, the professor of practice at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service in DC. And previously, he served as a special assistant to the president and senior director for East Asian affairs at the White House National Security Council during the George W. Bush administration. And we have the Professor Zhu Feng, who probably will gonna join us later. He is the professor and also as executive dean of the School of International Studies at Nanjing University. So, but last but not least, we have Dr. Peter Chiu, who is the chairman of the CGHK and also adjunct professor at Hong Kong Baptist University, who will moderate today's sessions. So today, together, we aim to unravel the complexities, seek insights, and foster a robust discussion that shed a light on the way forward in the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. So I will turn the floor to our moderator, Dr. Chiu. Following his opening remarks, Dr. Chiu will guide our discussion, and each panelist will begin with a brief 5 minutes remarks. After that, they will have an engaging and free discussion among our panelists. And all the audience can use the Q&A box on our app, just below our webinar section, and to raise your questions. And we will have a Q&A session before we're wrapping up. So, Dr. Chiu, I will turn the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dennis in DC and Qingguo in Beijing and Zhu Feng. So luckily, so you fix your problem, you fix your technical problem, and in joining us in Nanjing. So as Sheldon mentioned before, basically outcome of the Taiwan election is there. So whether it's a good result or not is out of the question. That's not a matter of discussion. I think basically in terms of what's going on next after the election, basically there are 3 or 4 lines. First of all, is what's going on with the presidential election or Taiwan's leader elect, whether or what he's going to say in terms of the cross relations. And secondly, is what's going on with Beijing to what extent will Beijing react. So it's a matter of for further observation. And last but not least is how the United States is responding to that. So basically, it's an issue not only of the cross-strait, but also between Beijing and Washington. So I will stress more it's a matter between Beijing and Washington. If we try to look at what's used to going on 20 years ago, that was easier for Beijing and Washington to control the situation over Taiwan Strait. When Chen Shui-bian was there, when Dennis was working for George W. Bush, that was easier. But this time is, over the course of last 2 decades, things are getting much more complicated. But again, if we try to look at what happened last week, shortly before the election, Liu Jiantao, the minister of the Chinese Communist Party, liaison, work, he went to Washington, and there was some consensus, limited consensus between Beijing and Washington. That's on one side. On the other side is shortly after the election, there was a delegation of the former government official from the United States just finished the visit in Taipei. I think they left, James Stanbrook and Laura Rosenberg, and also, Stephen Hardley. The day before yesterday, they met Tsai Ing-wen, Lai Ching-te in a row. In the afternoon, they met also, the two losers, so-called, yeah, Hou Youyi and Ke Wen-je, now it's fully up to Beijing and Washington to make their own assessment. And then later on, maybe there will some further more coordination between two capitals. So this is something which not only, as I mentioned before, matter over the Cross-Strait, but also, between DC and Beijing in this issue of how to make sure that nothing will be out of control before the 20th of May and after the 20th of May, and also in a grand context of the growing geopolitical tension between China and the United States. So now, guys, I will ask you to, maybe each of you, to make 3, 4, 5 minutes your own remarks, trying to present your points. Then after that, maybe we can go to a further panel discussion. So I will ask maybe Zhu Feng, since you joined at last, so you'll be the first, to present your points.
Okay, thank you, Zhenghai. Very good to see Daniel and Dennis and Qingguo. I think just the concluded Taiwan election, of course, is a very timely warning to the U.S. and China. So we couldn't just stay away from some sort of such a very simmered, domestic, some sort of struggling for Taiwanese on how the island will be heading up. So then when I see the Leichender's victory is not a big surprise, because we see the 40% of Taiwanese voters are very stern and very stable in supporting of the pan-green, we say, political force. But on the other hand, we say that Taiwan also has never been divided over how to just view the, we say, blue camps and the white camps. Just because of the failed, some sort of unification between the blue and the white. Then we see it just left the pan-green some sort of very big cutting edge in guaranteeing their majority in the voting results. But I think the two things is very nuancedly interesting. Firstly is then we will see the numbers of voters liking just again. I think it was sharp, declining since compared to the 4 years Tsai Ing-wen's second term, the re-election. Then second, we will see some sort of majority of Taiwanese, if we combining the two parts of the pan blue and the pan white, then we will see majority of Taiwanese prefer to see status quo. So then that kind of a very interesting controversy to showcase some sort of Taiwan's new domestic, dynamic. So from the Beijing's perspective, I think the election consequence is not a big surprise. I think a lot of people just before the election just had a very precise prediction what will be happening. So pan-green's, majority position is hard to shake out. Then second, we're also seeing it's also become some sort of, just I mentioned, timely warning to Washington and Beijing. So while we also see some sort of positive movement from Washington, D.C. So President Biden also mentioned he's not in support of Taiwan's independence. Very, very quickly after that kind of comments, White House official also made a very interesting point. U.S. will not be opposed to the unification between the two sides. So I see some sort of realistic turning around. Probably now it's just taking place in Washington, D.C. The reason is very simple. First, this year is the election year. Then the White House is also facing the two wars. It's a Ukraine war is going on. Then we will see the Israeli and the Hamas, war is going on. If the Taiwan Strait relations also become stormy, then the White House also have to facing the third war. I think that will be a bigger blow to the re-election prospects of the President Biden. So from this point, I see some sort of political pragmatism now is eating back. So from the Chinese words, we say, 坏事有时候可以变好事. So bad things sometimes also could turn into some sort of good things. So I basically just wish for, so lighting this re-election consequence could also boost some sort of escalating coordination between Beijing and Washington on how to keep the Taiwan issue on track. If that happened, I think that would be very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zhu Feng. You are quite optimistic, even in the short run or tactically. So, Dennis, are you the same optimistic?
Well, I'm glad to hear my friend Zhu Feng is so optimistic. That's a good way to start the conversation. Let me make 5 quick points.
Okay.
First of all, from the Washington viewpoint, Li's victory speech we thought was conciliatory, unifying, and very much focused on preserving the status quo. So from our point of view, he's off to a good start. Secondly, as Zhu Feng noted, Biden immediately said, we do not support independence. I would also note that Blinken in Davos today said, we are saying democracy is great, but actual independence is not. We want to maintain the status quo. Now, he did also say that he thought China's current policy of military pressure, isolation, and coercion is counterproductive to China's interests. We have noted on the Chinese side that the magazine Qiushi yesterday printed a speech by Xi Jinping in 2022, which called for a, quote, hearts and minds campaign toward Taiwan. We would hope that that means that Beijing may be looking at a new tact. At the same time, and I won't give this too much credibility, but on the MSS WeChat website, the line was much harsher. It said, we have firm will, full confidence, and sufficient capability to effectively use the anti-secession law as a sharp sword to resolutely and severely punish any Taiwan independence separatist activity. So we're seeing right this minute 2 messages out of Beijing, and we're not sure which one we should be listening to. Going forward, I would warn the Chinese side that domestic pressure is going to mean that the United States will continue to test China's tolerance of what China calls American salami slicing tactics. Representative Gallagher is planning to go to Taiwan soon, the head of this anti-CCP committee on Capitol Hill.
Wow.
The inaugural delegation, I would predict, will be very high profile, even though it will not be current officials. And I worry that Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, may make the decision to go to Taiwan. In terms of our allies, you're going to see continued efforts at bolstering defense and bringing allies like South Korea, the Philippines, Japan, Australia, more and more into the Taiwan defense system. I would just make one more point, and that is I see often in the Chinese press this idea that the United States finds Taiwan to be a pawn or a tool in our battles with Beijing. Now, as I think Zhu Feng noted, and Blinken reiterated today, a very important statement was made on the U.S. side that I have not seen in a long time. which was that we seek, quote, the peaceful resolution of any differences. That's not exactly what China has asked for, which, of course, support for peaceful reunification. But I think it is an important step forward in the American official position. And I'll leave that there.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, two voices in China and also two voices or some fractions within the United States. At least there are some subtle changes, as Dennis pointed out, on the side of the United States in terms of peaceful solution. So, Qingguo, what's your point?
Oh, thank you. Well, I agree with most of the things that have been said. Just make a few points. First, I think this election result is not a big surprise, as Professor Zhu Feng mentioned. Yeah, Lai Qingde won, but then his victory is also a very limited one. He got only 40% of the votes, and also the DPP lost control of the legislative yuan, and so about 60% of the population did not vote for him. So that narrows his mandate to do something, especially in terms of pushing for Taiwan independence. So this is a pro status quo kind of result. I mean, the election result. But also there are other forces that are pushing for keeping the status quo. The U.S. side has been quite forthcoming in saying that it does not support Taiwan independence, and also it has come out and expressed the view that it would endorse any form of peaceful resolution agreed by both sides. So that basically means that it does not exclude unification. I think so. The room for Lai, the so-called pragmatic independence worker, to push for his party's platform for independence is very limited. So that means that the need for the Chinese government to use force to stop independence has reduced somewhat. So what does that mean? Maybe in the short run, at least in the foreseeable future, we can expect the continuation of the current situation across the Taiwan Strait. Not too friendly, but at the same time, not moving toward a war. But there are risks and problems. First, I think there is a temptation on the part of the U.S. Congress, some people in the U.S. Congress, to make use of this. There are many legislations in the pipeline of the U.S. Congress, related to Taiwan, and also some congressmen may want to make good use of the Taiwan issue for his or her domestic political agenda. And of course, the U.S. election, nobody knows whether one or two of the or three or more of the candidates would want to make good use of the Taiwan issue to advance his or her political career. And also on the part of the mainland, I think, given especially facing the perceived provocations from the DPP and also from the U.S. Congress, especially, the demand for the Chinese government to do something to address the Taiwan issue once and for all will be still quite high. And of course, if the provocations, perceived provocations occur, then this would become a big pressure on the Chinese government. So well, my assessment is that in the foreseeable future, the Taiwan Strait probably is more likely to remain relatively stable. But at the same time, we are facing some risks and challenges. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Qingguo. Thank you, everyone. So it looks like there are always tactical and strategic approach both in Washington and Beijing. And there's a long run strategies or approaches and a short run strategies approaches. I think in terms of the strategic or long run, strategic difference between two sides, between China and the United States is still huge and even growing. But in terms of the short run, in terms of the tactical approach, particularly if we try to look at what's going on in this year, 2024, U.S. had election, U.S. has two wars, and China has domestic problems, economic problem, and not to mention there are some problems. Reportedly there are some problem with the military. People definitely need to make sure that nothing over the Taiwan Strait will be out of control. Having said that, we have to also consider, there's always some forces, as Qingguo mentioned before, as Dennis also mentioned before, within China and within the United States, and also within Taiwan. There are always at least two forces, two voices, or two fractions, and even more, moving towards different directions. It's a game. It's a game which we need to make sure that nothing, as I mentioned before, nothing will be out of control. So let's focus first of all, because we're not living in a context of 5-10 years. We're living in a context of 5-4 months, right? Even 5-4 weeks. So if we try to focus on the context, the short-run context of next 3-5-4 months. So let me first ask Danny the question, what's the assessment of the U.S. delegation which just finished the result, just finished the visit in Taipei, which just left Taipei yesterday, according to their conversation with Tsai Ing-wen, particularly with Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te on the side of the victory party. And then based on that, what's your analysis and prediction about U.S. policy? In the short and medium run, even before the 20th of May or after the 20th of May until the end of this year, we're not going to predict of what's going on 5-10 years later. Maybe next year something is going to happen. Something going to change with the United States because you are going to have an election in November. Who knows who will be the next U.S. president? If Donald Trump will be, maybe things will be different. We don't know. But let's focus on what's going on in the next 3-5 months. And particularly, let's focus on what's the assessment of the U.S. delegation, as I mentioned before, which just finished the visit in Taipei.
I'm sorry, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me make a few points on the delegation. In one way, the delegation was not unusual. We have had a senior official go to Taipei after the election, right after the election. Before, Bill Burns went once. But this was unprecedented in another way. First of all, this was bipartisan, a member of both parties. That was important. Secondly, you had the most respected former national security advisor, Steve Hadley, going. So a very high-profile individual on the Republican side, very powerful figure still within the Republican Party, and very, very well respected. Of course, you had Jim Steinberg, who was former Deputy Secretary of State, so another very high-profile individual. So the administration wanted to send a very strong signal that it was on top of the issue, that it was going to make sure that President-elect Lai understood exactly where the American side stood, no misunderstandings. So the message was very strong in Taipei, and it's the same message that Blinken gave in Davos today. We do not support independence. We do support a peaceful resolution if it is agreeable to both sides. We want the status quo to be maintained. So I think the delegation did a very good job of delivering the message. Of course, the question is whether President-elect Lai is listening and what is in his heart. And of course, we don't know what is in his heart. We know some of his history, and we're going to just have to wait and see. But I think this was a very strong move by the administration to very much signal both support for democracy in Taiwan, but also the limits that we have on what President Lai can do. I just want to add one point here, and that is that I think Professor Jia made an excellent point when he talked about the fact that Lai has very little maneuvering room domestically. He doesn't control the legislative yuan. He did not get a mandate of any sort. He only got 40% of the votes, which means 60% of the votes were not with him. And so I think that's actually a very hopeful sign. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, very good. So limit from the side of the United States is here. Signal was very clear to Lai Ching-te. So have you ever heard of something in sort of reaction from side of the Lai Ching-te? Because so far, as we'd experienced on the open media, he said in the press conference on the election results evening, he said, we'll be dealing with mainland China on the mutual respect basis. What does it mean? What does it mean? And what did he tell the U.S. delegation directly, face to face?
Well, I think it's too early to know. But I would also say, and this will be no surprise to the Chinese side, that we will all be watching very closely the 20 May inauguration speech. And what he does between now and 20 May in terms of preparing for that speech, in preparing his China approach, will be extremely important. Frankly, that's why I'm a little worried about people like Gallagher going to Taiwan, because they will deliver a different message from the message that the administration has given to Lai. And that can be perhaps would excite Lai in the wrong directions. So as Professor Jia clearly pointed out, there is a difference between the congressional approach and the White House approach. And that could cause difficulties.
So maybe if I can follow with the last question to you, Dennis, in this context, To what extent is this to compare with what's going on 20 years ago in terms of Chen Shui-bian? 20 years ago in 2004, there was also, first of all, there was shooting, one day before the election on the 19th of March, right. And later on, shortly before the inauguration speech, there was so much influence coming from the United States towards Chen Shui-bian. So 20 years later, could we compare this, or to what extent, to what limit, to what degree is this to compare with what used to be going on 20 years ago?
Well, Dr. Cho, I was a little surprised when you said that it was easy 20 years ago. From where I was sitting at the White House, it was not easy. It was the worst thing I had to deal with as the senior director. Because I will be frank with you, that Chen Shui-bian and his advisors would routinely reassure us that they were not pressing forward toward independence, and then they would make moves that clearly were for independence. So we had great difficulty with the Taiwan leadership. We could not believe them. And so you saw that we took very public steps to criticize President Chen Shui-bian and his policies. President Bush was very angry with Chen Shui-bian. President Bush had come into office as a big supporter of Taiwan, but he could not trust the Taiwan leadership. And so my job was to, frankly, rein in the Taiwan leadership, to make clear to them that we were not going to go to war on behalf of Taiwan independence. And so we took very, very strong measures. Now, I do think that if President Lai does something similar to what Chen Shui-bian has done in the past, I think the White House would work to rein him in. I'm not sure they would have as much room as we did because of the congressional pressures, because of the election. So that could be a bit of a problem. We had a freer hand in dealing with this. We weren't facing an election. We didn't have a Congress that was so eager to get involved in the Taiwan situation. So to be frank, the White House faces a different set of calculations than we did.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. So so maybe I should correct what I said before. I didn't say that. I meant since 20 years ago was easier, only in a sense of, the bilateral relationship between China and the United States was easier 20 years ago. It was not so complicated.
That was very true, and the president wanted to preserve that relationship very much.
Exactly.
Particularly because China had supported us in the war on terror.
Exactly. Yeah, domestically in China, and also, globally, China was different. US was different.
Right.
There was no Donald Trump at all. And between China and the United States, a lot of things was different. But all those things have changed over the course of not 20 years, over the last 10 years. So we don't need to mention this anymore. So things are a lot complex between Beijing and Washington, and therefore tactically, in terms of make sure that nothing will be out of control in Taiwan, will be tactical and also strategic hardship. Okay, so Zhu Feng, Qingguo, make your points, Zhu Feng.
Yeah, I think, of course, recently what changed over the Taiwan Strait relations, basically, and most importantly, is the great power competition posed by the Washington, D.C. So I think eventually Americans' China policy changed. So accordingly, Americans' Taiwan policy changed either. So that's why it also just, grounded the Beijing some sort of unbelievable great consciousness of a crisis over Taiwan Strait. So yes, I think the White House keep just insisting that China should be set back from the military coercion and military intimidation. But the problem is one of the basic imperative behind the Beijing's change the military posture of Taiwan is, as I mentioned, some sort of China's escalating consciousness of crisis over the U.S.-China relation, over the China-U.S. relations, and Americans' policy of China as well as the Taiwan. So this time, as I mentioned, so then when Blinken just made at Davos about the Americans, some sort of opposition to Taiwan's independence, I think it's not just some sort of relief, but it's also some sort of, we say, a positive trigger for both sides to reconsider the relations on how to keep the Taiwan issue truly on the management. So from this point, I'm a little bit, or we say, cautiously optimistic, because the situation to the Biden administration is also very, very sequentially, we say dangerous and even unpredictable. But the problem is, as Dennis also made a great point, we're also still facing a number of the wild cards. It's probably, well, not just always staying within the control of the Washington as well as Beijing. First is, what's the real in the mind of Lai Ching-te? He wants to continue to exploit the great power, the competition, the rivalry between the Beijing and the Washington, to advance some sort of Taiwan's, renewed legitimacy in pursuing the independence. I think we still have to wait and watch. But it seemed to me, Lai Ching-te will not just some sort of a very moderate, Taiwan independence seeker. Probably he also will, as I mentioned, make a very, very, desperately exploiting, the great power rivalry between Beijing and Washington. The second is America's domestic dynamic. So Capitol Hill, I think Dennis made a very great point, is just a racing on intervening with the Taiwan issue, because it's become some sort of a leading political capital for the young generation of Americans, congressmen and the senator, to just consolidate their political resources. So China factor is also overplayed by many of the Americans, the Capitol Hill members. It's also very, very stimulating and dangerous for Chinese to consider what sort of the reasonable approach we can just turning on. I think a last potential, a risk is now it's not the US only. Then if we're looking through some sort of regional members, it's Japan, it's Korean, it's Australian, they are one after another, just backing up and just trying to show in their sympathy to the Taiwanese. To be honest, diplomatic resources Lai Ching-te could just make use of now is wide. So that's why, as I mentioned, it's a high moment for Washington, Beijing to rebuild the consciousness. If we just always underestimate some sort of potential, the risk after Lai Ching-te came to the power, then we will be even just unwillingly and unwishfully just dragged into some sort of a more dangerous collision. That's my sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Qingguo. What's the position of Beijing is very clear. Even as Dennis mentioned before, there are two voices or more voices, which is also very understandable, right? What's actually the strategy from the side of Beijing now in dealing with this very difficult issue? Is Beijing still waiting the scene, or has Beijing already some tools and means in their hands to make sure, as I mentioned before, that nothing will be out of control, either before or after the 20th of May? What is Beijing doing now?
Well, first of all, I think we want to make sure that the May 20th speech not provocative enough to lead to drastic military actions. So I think both, Beijing or Washington and also the DPP, they are thinking very actively now as to how to manage this. So this is a very important issue to be managed in the foreseeable future. And I think more likely than not, Lai Qingde would try to take a so-called responsible approach. He would come up with something similar to Tsai Ing-wen's inaugural speech. In other words, with some vague acknowledgement of the history, the RC Constitution, sovereignty, issue in a vague sense. In other words, there is one China that incorporates both the mainland and Taiwan, but without specifically saying it. It's like 90 something. In essence, is similar to 92 consensus. But this is against probably his personal will. But then I think he has to be. Well, he's probably pragmatic enough to accept that.
Qingguo,
this is probably we are wishful thinking on our part. But then this is something that I think people on three sides are trying to work toward. In other words, once you have this kind of a saying or statement, then it would be hopeful for all three sides to see some kind of a stability and constructive engagement in the days to come. So this is something that Beijing, probably Washington and Taipei are working closely, on at the moment.
Okay, Qingguo, is Beijing still going to insist very clearly on the position 1992 consensus, or maybe with the same position but with different phrases, with different framework? This 92 consensus obviously didn't work with the DPP, with Tsai Ing-wen, not to mention with Lai Qingde. So I have some concern if Beijing still keep insisting on the 1992 consensus and waiting for Lai Qingde to respond to that. Maybe Beijing will be still disappointed.
Well, certainly, DPP would not say that we are endorsing 92 consensus.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the problem is, Beijing probably would not expect that DPP would come back to 92 consensus. It's politically not advisable for the DPP to stay in power. But at the same time, what 92 consensus stands for, provided the basis for political stability across the Taiwan Strait, that's the minimum thing that Beijing can accept with regard to the current, description of the current status across the Taiwan Strait. So I think when Tsai Ing-wen gave her inaugural speech in when she was first elected, she talked about the ROC Constitution. She talks about the historical arrangements. His predecessors have subscribed to, then she would also adhere to, and that sort of thing. So that's an attempt to address the problem, the concerns on the part of the mainland. And I think this time, Lai Ching-te has no choice. If he wants the stability across the Taiwan Strait, and if he wants to assuade, the Washington's concerns. He has to say something along that line. This is very important, not only for diplomacy and for addressing the concern on the part of the mainland, and it's also important for his political career. So he has to do something in that regard.
Okay, let me follow up with these questions, both between for all of your three guys. So what could be everyone is awaiting Lai Ching-te to say something which won't provocate, which won't trigger any further problems. Yeah, right. But we still don't know what will be the area, for the bottom line and up line. What will be said by Lai Ching-te. But maybe we can try to brainstorming, try to figure out and clarify what could be accepted by us, by Washington and Beijing. Dennis, what could be accepted by Washington when it comes down to what Lai Ching-te is going to say? Definitely, we know what couldn't be accepted by DC, right? If Lai Ching-te say, "Oh, I'm going to announce, I'm not going to declare Taiwan to be independent by tomorrow. I'm going to say I'm going to revise constitutions." I don't think Lai Ching-te would be so dumb to go so far. But anyhow, he's going to say in his inauguration speech on the 20th of May, which will be basically in 4 months. So we still have 4 months to testing, to pressing, to engage, to influence. So what could be accepted by Washington?
Well, first of all, I think if we had our way, we would like to see Beijing open an informal channel to President-elect Lai. When Tsai Ing-wen was first elected, there was apparently a very good back channel that was created. And there were, to my understanding, some productive discussions that occurred. Professor Jia has talked about Tsai's first speech. My understanding was she was trying to meet some of the conditions that had been set in that back channel discussion. Now, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to blame anybody for this, that didn't happen. That broke down at that point in time. But I don't think that means it isn't worth trying again. And so whatever kind of channel Beijing would choose, unofficial middlemen, I would suggest an attempt to open a channel in order to influence the speech. So that would be my top recommendation.
Okay, Zhu Feng and Qingguo, could you imagine? There must be some channel. There must be some. Yeah. Okay.
Such a back channel, of course, is tactically and even just the way say strategically very, very highly designed. The reason is what really helped the U.S. could play a bigger role in checking the Taiwan's independence movement, and also just give a very clear-cut message to the Taipei. So there's no risk. Just offending the China's with a bottom line. It's also, the common interest for Chinese and Americans, as well as the Taiwanese. The second, I think the very basic nature of across Taiwan Strait relations now is very dramatically shifted over to the great power competition. So US also needed to send a clear message to the China. So we don't want to just take the all cost US can afford to just break or just break as well the China's bottom line, because it's totally against our basic interests. So that's why I think Dennis' suggestion is very clearly understandable. But on the other hand, some sort of such a back channel mechanism also should be in parallel with very intensified, the conversation between Beijing and Washington. Don't just leave the China unbelievably imagine what you are doing, what you are saying. So then some sort of such a communication channel also should just established between Washington and Beijing. That will be more productive. Thank you.
Okay, so Qingguo.
I think a back channel is absolutely necessary for the two sides to make sure that things do not veer into something uncontrollable. But whether the Lai would agree, to what extent he would agree to accommodate Beijing's concern, that's a different issue. So as Zhu Feng mentioned, probably we need to work together to make sure that Lai would opt for the more pragmatic, choice. It's becoming increasingly unrealistic for people in Taiwan to push for independence. It's the cross-strait, balance of military capabilities is such that it's almost like a suicide. So why not opt for pragmatic management of the cross-strait relations? The US would not risk a war with China for independence of to meet the desire of the few people's independence desire. So probably Lai should realize this and should be more pragmatic. Should make efforts to address Beijing's concerns on the sovereignty issue of Taiwan. At the same time, maintain its Taiwan space of separate development, political, economic. So I think probably this is good for all three sides. Thank you.
Okay, maybe a few last questions. So from my point of view, I would rather focus on two phases within this year. The first phase is time between 20th of May, focusing on what's going on with the inauguration speech. Second phase will be focusing on the time after the 20th of May, starting from the 21st of May and until the end of this year, because we're not going to predict and influence what's going on next year, because next year there will be a new president. It could be Joe Biden, it could be someone else, right? But as long as we'll be in a position to manage, what's going on within this year, that will be already a great success. So, but how about that there will be no back channels as you guys hoped? How about if Lai Ching-te wouldn't listen to US, because which depends on his personality. We don't know him personally. Dennis, do you know him personally? What kind of personality he is compared with Chen Shui-bian? Chen Shui-bian was very popular. He was a big mouth, but we don't know Lai Ching-te's personality. So how about if he doesn't listen to you? How about if there will be no back channels as you guys, gentlemen, you hoped? So before the 20th of May. So what kind of tools and means does US have in your hands? What kind of tools and means does China have in his hand? I'm not talking about military conflict. No way. Otherwise, it's going to be disaster. But within the limit of trying to make sure that nothing will be out of control, but no back channels, and Lai Ching-te wouldn't listen to you. What kind of tools and means do you guys to have in your capitals, trying to make sure that things won't be out of control? Dennis, I'm just challenging you, try to challenge.
Sure. No.
I
understand your question. It's a very good one. First of all, we have our principled position, and we have made that principled position clear. And so if Lai Ching-te were to go in a negative direction, the first thing we would do is publicly state the principled position. And we would oppose any action that destabilizes the status quo. So I think the Biden administration position is quite clear. And the president himself made that clear the morning of the election in Taipei. And I think my Chinese colleagues made an excellent point earlier. And that is that with two crises now going on in Ukraine and the Middle East, the Biden administration doesn't need another crisis. And one of the things we would say to President-elect Lai is, we don't need more problems in the world. There are plenty of problems. Don't make a new problem. And so I think that the imperatives of the Biden administration in relation to what will be a very close American election, no matter who the Republican candidate is, it's quite clear that President Biden is not a very popular president at this point. That means a very tough race. He needs to be able to show he's managing the US-China relationship. So I would say that if President Lai does something provocative, the US will come down hard on him.
In terms of?
Well, I mean, we have options. We can obviously delay arms sales to Taiwan.
Okay.
We could lower our economic relationship with Taiwan. We could ask our allies to take actions that would be somewhat negative toward Taiwan.
I see. Okay, that's very concrete. Zhu Feng and Qingguo, what will Beijing? What kind of tools and means will Beijing have in his hand?
Yeah, I basically think Dennis really made a great point. I think actually no country will be embedded and a stronger position than the Washington D.C. to keep the Taiwanese on the track. So if the U.S. truly want just give a step to the administration, if it does not, just follow up the advice. I think the Taipei has really no the leverage to back up to hit back. So the back down is quite expected. But the problem is this. I'm one thing is my key concern. As I mentioned, so we need some sort of a paralleling mechanism, not just between the Washington D.C. and the Taipei, but also between the Washington D.C. and the Beijing. What I just concern me most is we should stay away from any simmering conspiracy theory. I mean, if you couldn't just enhance the Beijing's understanding of Americans, the moving up vis-a-vis the Taipei's, some sort of risk-taking policy, then probably it also will be very badly turning on to some sort of let's say conspiracy theory between the U.S. and the Taipei. So Beijing's response probably is also getting harder to predict. So that's why I think of that kind of a nuanced, balanced approach. I really hope Washington D.C. could care both Taipei and Beijing. Another point I want to add is, if Americans' policy move on is showing some sort of America's growing ability and the design to keep Taiwan on the track, I hope it also could be turning out to be a positive push for Beijing's more constructive policy response to the cross-Taiwan relations. That will be some sort of a trilateral positive entanglement. That would be great. So from this point, Dennis, I really hope some sort of a new positive dynamic build-up should be on the way, immensely and quickly. Thank you.
Okay, Qingguo.
Yeah. Well, I think Beijing will not tolerate Lai's perceived move toward Taiwan independence. Will take whatever necessary actions against it, both at the military level and the economic level. So, but I think Lai probably would be smart enough not to.
What enough would be?
He would be smart enough not to challenge. Not to challenge. Beijing's bottom line. I think maybe at the bottom of his heart, maybe he wants Taiwan independence. But he's been working as a politician for many years. I mean, he should be pragmatic enough not to take such kind of political risks. So I think more likely than not, he's not going to challenge China's bottom line on Taiwan independence. And but then the cross-strait relations will depend on how much he can assure Beijing that he's not going to push for Taiwan independence. If he's successful, which is very difficult because his party has a Taiwan platform, the independence platform, and he depends on the political support of the ideologues within his party. But if he's successful to assure Beijing, just in case, that he's not going to push for Taiwan independence, then probably, he can open up a new phase of cross-strait relations that's more peaceful and constructive. But then if he's not successful, then we are going to see a serious problems. One of the problems is he's going to face is Beijing has has been giving Taiwan some kind of preferential trade agreement, trade relations, and also investment, policies. And Beijing may phase out those preferential treatment. If since both Beijing and Taiwan are WTO members, so Beijing may require Taipei to comply with WTO, trade practices. So this may lead to may make the economic situation more difficult in Taiwan, and also maybe some other countries are going to feel better, like South Korea, which always felt that Beijing's preferential treatment, economic treatment to Taiwan, comes at its own at the price of sacrificing its own interests. But whatever happens, I think there are limits as to how far things can go. As far as Beijing is concerned, Taiwan is not independent. It's still part of Chinese territory. And we have two different political systems, economic systems. So it's a de facto one country, two system arrangement. There is no big hurry to change this, unless Taiwan is trying to change this in a fundamental way by seeking independence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I already see a few questions in our Q&A column, but before I pick up those questions, let me put up my question in terms of the tactical approach, how to influence DPP and Lai Ching-te before the 20th of May, because that's very urgent. So we mentioned personality of Lai Ching-te. We don't know, but we do know he has a deputy, Xiao Meiqing. Xiao Meiqing knows the United States very well. Xiao Meiqing has been dealing with the United States very well. So Xiao Meiqing also once appeared in my show 16 years ago, only very uniquely once. She was working for Xie Changting at that time during the election for 2008. So my impression is she's someone, she still has a sort of soft heart, sitting very deep in her heart, but she's on the sanctioned list of Beijing. She's on the sanctioned list of Beijing, but she has been dealing with the United States so well. So Dennis, do you guys have some rooms to influence Xiao Meiqing, and through Xiao Meiqing try to influence Lai Ching-te or not? Because someone keeps saying, oh, Xiao Meiqing is going to concentrate the policy of Tsai Ing-wen and no change at all, which I don't believe. From my experience dealing with her 16 years ago, she has some sort of very soft heart, but sitting very deeply. You need to dig out her soft heart. So,
we found Bi Kim Xiao to be extremely helpful when she was the representative in Washington. For example, my understanding is that when Speaker McCarthy wanted to go to Taipei, she understood that this wasn't a good idea.
Okay.
And that she influenced people in Taipei on the issue. So I think she's very pragmatic. Of course, she's half American, actually. She used to have an American passport. Her mother is American.
Exactly.
And so she knows us extremely well. She has very many friends here in Washington. And so I think she is going to be a very positive aspect to a leader like Lai, who really doesn't know America that well. It's been a long time since he was a student here. As you can tell, his English is not as fluent as Bi Kim Xiao. And so I was very pleased to see her selected as the vice president, because I think in terms of communication between Washington and Taipei, she will be a very important player.
So Beijing, Xiao Meiqing is on the still on the sanction list of Beijing. So any Qingguo or Zhu Feng, any ideas?
Well, I think certainly, in a way, Washington has a bigger influence on Xiao Meiqing. So probably she would correctly reflect or represent Washington's concerns to Lai Qingde, and given the current policy of the Biden administration, I think this is a sign. Well, this is good news for stability. But to what extent she's going to influence Lai Qingde, that's another issue. As far as Beijing is concerned, I think it's open. If Xiao Meiqing can do something positive in terms of cross-strait relations, it's good. I mean, but if she cannot do anything, then Beijing's view of her and would be different. So the sanctions probably are more related to her role as representative of Taipei in Washington. But whether Chinese government's view of her probably would use a different standard now as she becomes the deputy chief of the Taipei government.
Okay, last but not least, let me pick up one question from our. Okay, Dennis, are you going to say something? No, or not? Okay, so let me pick up last question from our Q&A column to Professor Wilder. Recently, Chinese government argues that U.S. is promoting the Taiwan to join IMF. That the U.S. promote Taiwan promoting the Taiwan's joining IMF by promoting from U.S. is unacceptable. So the is U.S. still going to continue to promote Taiwan to join the IMF directly, or is U.S. going to consider to negotiate with Beijing later on, or it is just like a tactic?
Well, thank you for the question. As you know, the United States view is that we would like to see Taiwan in as many international organizations as possible, where it is not a condition of being part of those organizations that you be a state government. Now, the IMF is one of those organizations where we see great value in having Taipei, the 10th largest economy in the world, being part of the organization. And we will, on the U.S. side, I think, continue to press on this issue and on other international organizations, again, where the requirement is not statehood.
Even if Lai Qingde is not going to listen to you before or after 20th of May?
Well, that's a different question. I am assuming, like my friend Jia Qingguo, that Lai has very little maneuvering room.
I see.
And
I see.
Therefore, we are not going to see him, as Jia said, touch Beijing's bottom line. I think that I am quite confident that if in many ways President-elect Lai has very little running room.
So there's also another question also for you. So it's a hypothetical but quite a theoretical question. If peaceful unification happens in the foreseeable future, will the U.S. allow this to happen? So what is Taiwan's strategic importance to the United States beside defending democracy?
I think there are different views on that in the United States, to be frank with you. People have pointed to testimony by a senior member of the Department of Defense where he called Taiwan a strategic military asset. You will notice that that statement has never been said again by an American official of the Biden administration. It is not the position of the Biden administration to consider Taiwan part of our strategic defenses in East Asia. As Secretary Blinken said today, and has been said many times before by American officials, although not so much recently, if both sides can come to a resolution that is acceptable to the people of both sides of the strait, the United States will not stand in the way. I believe that to be the official position of the Biden administration. Now, a different administration could take a different position, but as of today, that is the official position of the United States, that if the two sides can work it out, whatever they work out, be it a confederation, an EU solution, there are so many different ways that you could do this, but we would support it as long as the people on both sides of the strait support it.
Okay, the last question is maybe for Qingguo and Zhu Feng, maybe very short. I know the question will be tough. How flexible and creative can Beijing be given these new dynamics in Taiwan? So any ideas? Zhu Feng?
Yeah, I think of course the China's policy of Taiwan must be some sort of a two-sided stuff. One is, some sort of flexible and we say receptiveness, but also should be military intimidation and coercion. The reason is Taiwan issue by nature is not just simply between the mainland and the Taipei. The very basic nature of the Taiwan issue now is become some sort of we say import part of the great power competition and the geopolitical tension in East Asia. So no Chinese could be naive. But the problem is, yes, we need to show growing flexibility to increase the China's influence over the Taiwanese. Even just simply just being tougher, to be honest, is sometimes is unsmart and even stupid. Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you. We still have a few questions, but our time is running out. So it's already very late in DC. So Dennis still needs to teach tomorrow morning. So, okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, gentlemen. So it's a very brainstorming, very insightful, very free, as I always hope, and constructive, dialogue. And I hope that we can continue this, hoping that we can maintain everything. We can make sure that nothing will be out of control. So I will leave up to Sheldon to close.
Yeah, thank you for all the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Xu, for moderate that, and thank you for Professor Wilder and Professor Jia and also Professor Zhu Feng to participate in this engaging conversations and earning. And also, I will extend our thanks to our other colleagues, friends, and scholars and the students who joined us today. So should you have any questions, concerns, or share interest in collaboration among our research institution or either employment, I encourage you to explore our website and don't hesitate to reach out to me. And yeah, I also want to say that we have a following 2 sessions from tomorrow and also on Friday, and Dr. Yawei Liu and Dr. Yun Sun and also Mrs. Bonnie Glazer and Professor Da Wei will also be joining us in the following 2 sessions. So please watch out our updates, and if you guys do interested in, and please you guys are really welcoming to just sit in and to listen and enjoy the engaging discussion on the implications on the U.S. and China relations and also the Asia security in general. Yeah, thank you again.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Dennis in DC and Qingguo in Beijing and Zhu Feng in Nanjing. Thank you so much. And good night and have a good night to Dennis and have a good day to Qingguo, to Zhu Feng. Yeah. Okay. Let me close.